Buckle up guys, this is going to be an important video. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success. I cannot believe exams paper 1 first language English is in a matter of days. I'm scared, so I can only imagine what you guys are feeling right now. And you know I mean serious business when I get the ring light upstairs, I have the white backdrop. I was thinking, what can I do to help you guys out just a little bit more? And with only a few more days until paper 1, no, I'm not going to be doing another walkthrough, but it's going to be a really quick what you need to do for each question and what you should really avoid doing for each question. And with all that said and done, let's get straight to it. Hey guys, so let's have a quick run through of this paper 1, and its title, well, the text A is titled The Problem with Plastics. If you want to have a go at this paper, I will link it in the description box below. As mentioned before, this is not going to be a complete walkthrough. I think I have 2 or 3 already on my channel. It's just going to be a quick run through what you should do for each question and what pitfalls you should avoid. Now, the first questions 1A to E should be relatively straightforward. They focus on the first text, which will be a piece of fiction usually. And question 1A will always be assessing your understanding of explicit ideas. I'm not sure if it always asks for 3 examples. I think sometimes 1, sometimes 2. But whatever the case, you need to read the question properly. With the case of this question, it asks you to give 3 examples of man-made materials humans use more than plastic. And of course, you need to include all 3 for 1 mark. So this is important for all questions really. You need to pay attention to the marks, the questions, and indeed the command verbs that are used. Generally speaking, the answers to 1A to E should be close to the top, certainly question 1A. Now, it gets a little bit tricky quite quickly with 1B, and you have to use your own words to explain what the text means by 2 phrases. It will always be 2 phrases, and you'll notice that you can get up to 4 marks. Now, it's really important that you explain both strands of the phrase given. So with this one in particular, you would need to explain what adaptable means and durable. Using suitable synonyms is probably the easiest way to approach this question, or you can explain what that phrase means within a sentence. But I think thinking of a suitable synonym is far easier. With the second one, you need to explain what an astonishing mass means. So for example, for adaptable, I'm sure Cambridge would accept can be changed, and durable, lasts a long time. Astonishing mass. Now this is about plastic, so you need to make sure that what you are explaining is relevant to whatever context you have been given. So with astonishing mass, astonishing, significant, mass, a large amount of plastic. 1C, again, shouldn't be too difficult. Read where you are supposed to read from and give 2 reasons why disposing of plastics is difficult. Again, usually it's assessing your understanding of selecting and retrieving explicit ideas. Just make sure that you give 2 reasons and not 1 reason. Now for 1D, you have to identify 2 facts. So again, explicit ideas. What is important to note is that it's not necessary to put any evidence into your own words, unless of course it asks you to do so, and it does with 1E. Just pulling out relevant quotations is sufficient. Now for the second strand, what changes are needed to improve the recycling of plastic? You'll notice that it's worth 3 marks. That means, of course, you need to include 3 changes. This will no doubt be assessing your understanding of both explicit and implicit ideas, so you might need to do a bit of digging. Now, question 1E is the only question which states using your own words. And it's really important that you do use your own words where appropriate. Otherwise, you're not going to get the full 3 marks. And again, look at how many marks are awarded. That means that you need 3 separate points. Now, question 1F is the first core question. It's the first big question. It's worth 15 marks, 10 marks for reading and 5 marks for writing. Now, I do need to stress that just because it's 10 marks for reading does not mean that you need 10 ideas from the text. I think 7, 8, 9 is more than sufficient. Can you write a summary which is 120 words, which includes 10 ideas? Absolutely, but it is quite difficult. Mark scheme does state a range of ideas. That does not mean 10 ideas. Now, I'm not going to lie, this question is quite difficult. There's lots of things that you need to remember. First of all, you need to read the question carefully. You need to know what you are focusing on. So this particular question says, what problems are associated with plastic waste and the way documentary program makers are presenting the issue? So make sure that you pull out any key words. Sometimes question 1F will ask you to summarize 2 strands, 2 separate things. It will use that conjunction, and you are welcome to write 2 separate paragraphs if that helps you, or 1 paragraph. That's completely up to you. You are not going to lose any marks. Now, the most important thing with this question is that you know your route. You highlight relevant ideas which link to the question, and then you number those ideas. What you want to try and do is group similar ideas together. You don't want to adopt this linear chronological approach, starting from the top, ending with the bottom, because chances are you will repeat yourself. So you want to look for patterns, you want to look for similar things, and you want to use more complex sentence structures to try and group things together. Otherwise, you will run out of words quite quickly. Will you get penalised for going slightly over? Probably not. Will you get penalised for going slightly under? Again, probably not. But generally speaking, let's look at sort of normal size writing. Half of this page is usually about 120 words. You want to try and use appropriate discourse markers as well to get your writing marks. It needs to be fluid. It needs to be usually in the present tense, and you must use your own words where appropriate. Adjectives, certain verbs, certain nouns. You need to try and find synonyms, geographical terms, technical terms, scientific terms. You will not need, or you will not be expected to find alternatives, generally speaking. Now, it's really important that you do not throw any marks away here. Now, what you need to do is identify a word or phrase from text C. So that is the story, the fiction piece at the end, which suggests the same idea as the words underlined. You will not find these phrases in the story. They have been written. You need to find words or phrases which have the same meaning. You do not need to explain the meaning of these words or phrases, which quite often my students do. Okay, so boats used for recreational purposes, bright and cheerful, not as strict, patches of sea covered with a film of poisonous oil. You will find phrases in text C which mean the same. And it's really important that you do not include any additional information. It should still make sense. So once you've found your word, once you've found your phrase, substitute it with the phrase underlined. Does it still make sense? If it doesn't make sense, try and remove any additional information. Now, the next lot of questions, 3 marks are available. Fingers crossed it's not too difficult. It's only difficult when they include more difficult vocab, which they do sometimes. You've got strolling, caught sight, unmoving, so not too difficult with this particular question. For strolling, for example, walking leisurely would no doubt be acceptable. Caught sight means noticed, and unmoving, unmoving shapes, of course, means still. 3 easy marks, fingers crossed. Now, this is another question which I often see answered poorly because many students don't know how to approach it. It is, I guess, a watered down version of the writer's effect question, the second core question, which comes next. You need to read the information at the top. So with this particular question, it asks you to explain how the writer suggests his feelings about what he saw on the beach. So I would actually include that keyword feelings, and of course you would include around 3 adjectives to explain his feelings. Now, you're not required to zoom into a bunch of words. You are just required to use one example. So you could use the image batch of carcasses, for example. I get my students to simply write this at the top. And then you could write, for example, firstly, the writer suggests that he is feeling shocked, blah, 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 because the image creates a sense of whatever. Secondly, it suggests that he is feeling. Thirdly, or lastly, it suggests that he is feeling. The important thing is that you say 3 different things about your image. You don't even need to zoom in, really. Now, question 1D is the second core question, as mentioned, commonly referred to as the writer's effect question. You are directed to 2 different paragraphs, and you are directed to 2 different paragraphs for a reason, because the writer's intentions will be different. That's why I always get my students to start with the topic sentence, the overall effect of the language creates an image of. So you'll write 2 paragraphs, and in each paragraph there will be 3 quotations. Now, I'm not going to go into the structure. There are different ways to structure this response. There are loads of videos on the writer's effect question on my channel, but put simply, this question is all about language, analyzing language, looking at imagery. Now, you'll notice that it says write between 200 and 300 words. Don't be counting the words. Yes, you can go over. Yes, you can go slightly under, but this is all about language. You should be demonstrated to Cambridge that you understand how language works, and you should be exploring those different shades of meaning. I get my students to say at least 2 comments per image, and generally, and you want to try and start with the explicit meaning of the words within whatever context you have been given, and then you move on to the next layer, which is your language analysis. It's important to note that there are no writing marks for this question. It's 15 marks reading, so technically speaking, you can have this really haphazard response or these haphazard paragraphs and still get a top mark. Really, you are being marked on the level of your analysis. Now, question 3, commonly referred to as the extended writing response. I say this all the time, it can really make or break your response. And it really worries me when I hear that students leave 20 minutes, 25 minutes, they run out of time. I think to do this question well, you need at least 40 to 45 minutes. Why? Because you need to know TXT inside out. You need to know your route. You need to make annotations. You need to know the characters or the character really, really well, because essentially with this task, you are being asked to assume the role of someone else. You need to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. So your language choices, any stylistic choices that you use, your sentence structure, they need to replicate whatever character is being conveyed in the text. Now, there are 8 non-fiction text types that could come up if you separate letters into informal and formal letters. You need to be prepared for any of those text types that come up, and you need to know the sort of generic features that you want to try and shoehorn in. For example, with magazine articles, generally they're quite informal, they're chatty, they're engaging, they've got a headline, they've usually got subheadings. These are those sort of generic conventions that you need to know for each text type. Journal writing, for example, you might use idioms, phrasal verbs, humour, sarcasm. speeches. You might use rhetorical questions, imperative, anecdotes. The list is endless. Now, there are 15 marks available for the content of your answer. Again, that does not mean that you need to have 5 ideas for bullet point 1, 2, and 3. A range of ideas is fine. By the end, you do need to cover all 3 bullet points. Equally, you should end up with 3 paragraphs, which are kind of a similar length. Yep, I definitely got cut off there. Where was I? So I was explaining that by the end, you kind of need to have 3 equal sized paragraphs. And of course, you need to leave time to proofread and revise. With this question, more than any question, I would advise you to do a plan in your answer booklet. Actually, Cambridge appreciates students who plan. It will certainly make them happy. Just put a little line through your plan at the end. You want to remember to have something to highlight or even a pencil because you need to identify relevant information. Now, generally speaking, the first 2 bullet points are not too difficult. You should be able to highlight 5 things which you can include in your response. Bullet point 3 is quite tricky. It generally requires you to consider the whole text and you need to infer a little bit more. Now, the general approach, once you have highlighted and identified the information that you need, is to understand what the main idea is and then write about that idea and then develop relevantly. It's really important that for a range of your ideas you are developing, and that can be as easy as including the character's thoughts and feelings. Make sure you do not lift from the insert from text C. You mustn't copy words, phrases from text C. Again, scientific terms, geographical terms, etc. are fine, but the majority, if not all of your response needs to be written in your own words. You are simply using text C almost as a springboard to writing your response. Think about the different sentences. Think about using compound, complex, simple sentences. Think about using minor sentences for effect. Think about what a ripe forest, what persuasive techniques would be appropriate for the task. Think about the audience. Now, I use the acronym TAP. Text type, audience and purpose, and I would write this on your insert. Of course, the text type is always given, but think carefully about your audience. How is that going to affect your language? Think about the purpose. Is it to argue? Is it to inform? Is it to persuade? Because this will influence the persuasive devices, the rhetorical devices that you use. Think about the formality. Is it a formal text type, a formal report or a newspaper report? They are written very differently to, say, a journal where you can break certain grammatical rules. Think about your opening. How is it going to hook the reader? How is it going to hook the audience? How are you going to create a sense of character, a sense of purpose? There's so much that goes into this question, which is why it's really important that out of all of the questions, you practice question 3s, a lot of them. And I cannot stress this enough. Make sure you get your timings right. You do not want to leave yourself with 20 minutes for this question because, as mentioned, it can really make or break your grade. I think you need at least 40 minutes to do this question. For the writer's effect, about 30 to 35 minutes. The summary question, 20 to 25 minutes. And then, of course, the smaller questions, that give you about half an hour. If, when you finish the exam, you have time to spare, well, A, that's worrying, and B, get proofreading, get editing your responses. And breathe. I think that's everything, guys. Let me know if I've missed anything and leave your questions in the comments below. And I just wanted to end this video with a final good luck and thank you so much for your ongoing support. Do let me know how you get on with paper 1 and I can't wait to hear your success stories. Until next time, bye bye.